Okay, this is Chris Stadler, and I am going over the attributes of a journalist. And so what I did was I asked ChatGPT, "What are the attributes of a good journalist?" And it gave me 7 attributes. This is the last one, empathy and fairness. The reason we're not going through an article and we're using GPT is because this is bullet points, and it's much better overview. We can dig into these things if you guys have questions. All right, well, let's look at empathy and fairness. It says empathy and fairness. A journalist understands the human impact of their stories. Empathy allows them to report sensitively on vulnerable subjects, while fairness ensures that they represent all perspectives honestly. So this I've seen this be a massive contradiction. So the word empathy has different definitions depending on who you talk to. Um, a lot of times it's just caring about people, and then other times it's contrasted from compassion in that empathy is like, hey, you're just being there, there's no judgment, right? Well, how do you help people if there's no judgment? If you're like, there's no, you didn't do anything wrong. um Maybe they did do something wrong, you don't know that, you're just trying to make friends. Like, that's what a sycophant would say. That's what a liar would say, is you didn't do anything wrong. But your friend is going to tell you if you did something wrong, and your friend is going to tell you if you need to change. They're going to use their judgment. They're going to help you in that. They're going to tell you. And so when this says empathy and fairness, here's what I hear, and I'm just going to say here's an example of what I see. So first of all, they understand the human impact of their stories. It allows them to report sensitively on vulnerable subjects. And then on the other hand, right after that, it says, well, fairness ensures that they represent all perspectives honestly. So what it's saying is, like, the second thing sounds like be really objective and be fair, right? Because it says fairness. So represents all perspectives honestly. But then the first sentence is understands the human impact of their stories. Empathy allows them to report sensitively on vulnerable subjects. So in other words, be biased, be unfair toward um, the human impact of the stories. So when I read that, I look at what's going on in media, and I'm like, okay, so anybody who's considered, it sounds very intersectional, where it's like, oh, if you're a woman, you're gay, transgendered, then a journalist needs to understand the human impact of those for those people. But if you're a rich businessman, does this sound like we're worried about the human impact on him and his family? And so what it sounds like to me is that it's like, well, you have to balance these two things that are contradictory, right? Like, can't you just say fairness and not have to add empathy in there? And I think that I don't think empathy is. Are we supposed to be empathetic toward the businessman who we think might be doing something wrong? What if he claims he's the victim? Okay, well then we're empathetic, and we give him the benefit of the doubt, or what is it? Allows him to report sensitively on vulnerable subjects. Like, who are we talking about here? We're not talking about the businessman. We're talking about the one we feel sorry for, whoever that is. So whoever the journalist feels sorry for, they're gonna they're gonna they're gonna they're gonna bias the story toward that person, or they're gonna report with fairness, which are two different things. So let's look at this one more time because we're about truth here. It says, understand the human impact of their stories. Okay, yeah, that's good to understand it, but it doesn't say bias it, right? Empathy allows them to report sensitively on vulnerable subjects. What do you think that means, sensitively? I know this is GPT, but it's getting its information because it's been trained on what it sees out in the media. It's been trained on what's been fed through in the media. So let's ask it how you can privilege one side of the story and then be fair to the other, and let's see what it says. Maybe we'll use this as an example. Let me pause it. Actually, I'm not going to pause. I'm going to let you guys watch this in real time. Explain how point 7 isn't a contradiction since it seems like you're saying to um, be empathetic toward one side, but then also be fair. So I'm going to guess this is what it's going to say. If I word it this way, it's probably going to say, no, you should be empathetic toward all people. Um, so, should we be empathetic toward the politician who is accused of rape? Um, because we feel sorry for him or feel that he's a victim and he has a family. As a family, this seems like the opposite of what a journalist should do. See what it says. You're to question the balance. No, there's no balance. If it's a contradiction, there's no such thing as a balance. Empathy and fairness can seem at odds, especially in cases involving serious allegations. However, empathy in journalism doesn't mean taking sides or accuse. It means understanding and respecting, representing the human elements. Empathy for the facts, not for bias, without contradiction. Okay, this is turning into a longer video. Empathy for the facts. Empathy for that just makes no sense. Or making an excuse for actions that it's about grasping the emotional stakes involved for everyone affected by a story. In a case like an accusation of rape, empathy means respecting the trauma of victims. But how do we know who the victim is? So maybe trauma of the claimed victims, right? Fairness and presentation. Fairness is about objectivity and giving due weight to all credible perspective. Credible according to who? Well, empathy helps journalists ask sensitive questions and avoid sensationalism. I don't know. I don't think empathy means avoiding sensationalism. I don't think empathy, it might sort of help, but that's not why you do it. Fairness ensures they report without favor. The goal is to approach each story impartially, showing what is known, what is alleged, and what parties involved are without favoring one side or the other based on emotion. Yes, of course. I know what that means. Empathy helps avoid dehumanizing people involved in complex stories. For instance, a journalist covering an accusation must avoid assumptions portraying both the accused and accused positions for this. Yeah, okay, I would say that's true, but I don't think I'd use the word empathy. I think, I think it's doing is it's basically saying, I said this, and now I'm going to like make it sound like what I said was true. I don't think empathy for the facts is important at all. I do think it might make a good point. Empathy helps avoid dehumanizing people involved in complex stories. So maybe there's that, but that's not what it said. It didn't say to avoid dehumanizing. Maybe it did. Well, all right. So if we're going to give it the benefit of the doubt, then this is probably the most important thing. Empathy for facts. You don't have empathy for facts. You don't have empathy for fact. You don't identify with facts. You This is very convoluted now. All right, so what I'm going to say is that we report with fairness. We don't know if the politician is guilty. We don't know if the girl who accused him of rape is guilty. We don't know if it's switched. We don't know if she's making a bad allegation. And so, how can we be empathetic toward any one of those people except for to treat them as humans? I don't think most journalists treat politicians they don't like as humans, for sure. But I think this is a good point. So we should remember to do that. You don't want to dehumanize people. Um, Illegal immigrants, politicians you don't like. You don't want to do that to conservatives, Republicans, liberals, or anything like that. All right, so I guess I'm sort of satisfied. I disagree. I think this is very poorly worded, but it almost kind of explained away um, my concern. We are not. we get to the bottom of things. We don't care if you like it or not, and but we don't dehumanize people. That's not really what's called for in our industry. So good conversation. And glad we had that conversation with ChatGPT. All right, this concludes this little series on what it takes to be a good journalist. And let's have a great conversation in the comments and see what happens. All right, see you guys.